the oak tree is still the most sacred tree in the Illuminati world. And it is the same oak that you will find the Illuminati owl at the Bohemian Grove is made out of. That is a 40-foot oak Illuminati owl. The nights of Samhain, Druids would gather at Stonehenge, and they had previously taken gourds or turnips. In America, we use pumpkins, and hollowed them out, and they would fill them up with human fat. This fat had been gathered from previous human sacrifice offerings to the various pagan gods of the Druids. Now, they would take these items, set them aside. Then they would take out these huge cauldrons and put them over a fire pit, and they would light them. And these cauldrons were filled with an apple-like substance, almost like apple juice, or a mead is really the closest thing to it. And they would light those fires, and then they would take these turnips, these gourds, in America we use pumpkins, and they would go wandering out throughout the countryside to various homes of nobility, such as dukes, marquises, they'd visit this castle, this manor, and they would literally walk up to these doors and bang on them and scream out trick or treat. For those inside the home, this little sent a wave of absolute terror throughout their bodies, because if the Lord of the Manor cooperated with the Druids and gave them a treat, they would take one of their own household servants, and if they had no servants, they would use one of their own household members, one of their families, and give them over to those Druid priests so that they could be used as a human sacrifice offering that night. Now, as a reward for the treat, the Druids would leave one of those pumpkins that had been previously filled with fat on the front door and light it. This was supposed to protect everyone inside of that house, that mansion, that manor, from all the demonic forces that they would be summoning up during the nights of Samhain. Now here's the trick. If you did not cooperate with the Druids and give someone over for a human sacrifice offering, they would paint a 6-pointed star in blood with a circle around it on the door. This is the foulest, most evil of all symbols in the occult world. There's nothing that can even come close. You need this symbol to literally call up a demon into this plane of existence. This is known as a hexagram. It's a 6-pointed star with a circle around it. Usually that night, someone would be driven to their death from fear of everything that would be summoning up. They would be being attacked by demons, having these visions and everything. They would literally be driven to their own death through fear. Now, after many hours of wandering about through the countrysides, the Druids would come back to places such as Stonehenge, and this is where they would begin to have their version of fun. They would take their sacrifices, their soon-to-be human sacrifices, and they would line them up in one straight line. Now, do you remember those huge cauldrons we were speaking about? It would be cauldrons such as these huge cauldrons that had been previously filled up with that apple cider or mead-like substance, and the Druids would take apples and throw them into these cauldrons. Now I want you to think of something first before I continue. The boiling point of a liquid in this case is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Literally speaking, it could melt the flesh right off of you. And so what the Druids would be doing, they would be taking apples and throw it into those cauldrons. Then they would take one of those people and bring them up to the cauldron and say, now if you can take one of those apples out in between your teeth on the first try, we will let you go. Now, think about this. How many of you would actually take the opportunity to try to grab one of those apples in between your teeth so that you could leave alive? Well, at first, most people would say, sure, I would do it. But you have to remember also, that cauldron has been boiling away for hours and hours and hours. It has reached the boiling point of 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It could literally melt the flesh off of you. Now, would you dip your head into that cauldron? Now, most people would say no. However, most of those poor victims back then did it. Because, you see, that would be the only chance that they had of escaping and living. There's no other choice. If they wanted to have a chance to live and go back to their families, they would take it. Of course, the problem would be, once they dipped their heads into that liquid, I mean, oh my goodness, medically speaking, from my medical background, I can tell you the damage was horrific, Not just the third-degree burns and the scarring alone that would happen afterwards, but the 212 degrees liquid going into the ears would give them permanent hearing loss. Into their mouths, they would have respiratory damage for the rest of their days. If any went in between the eyelids, they'd end up blind or near blind. I mean, the horror of what the Druids considered to be a game is reprehensible in the least. But for those who actually grabbed an apple, the Druids cut their binds off immediately and sent them home. However, if you did not grab an apple in between your teeth on the first try, they threw you on the ground and beheaded you right there on the spot.